Chapter 1. Stop reacting, start observing. The cost of the reflex. Think back to the last time you lost your temper, or the last time you felt the sting of an insult and immediately snapped back with a defensive comment. In that moment, you felt a surge of energy, a chemical cocktail of adrenaline and cortisol. You felt justified. You felt like you were standing up for yourself. But look closer. What actually happened? You gave the other person exactly what they wanted, a reaction. You signaled to everyone watching that you are easily manipulated. You proved that someone else holds the remote control to your nervous system. In the high-stakes world of power and influence, reactivity is the mark of the amateur. It is the behavior of the prey, not the predator. When you react, you are moving on someone else's timeline. When you observe, you are operating on your own. The neurology of the gap. To master your emotions, you must first understand the biological prison you've been living in. Deep inside your brain lies the amygdala, the ancient, primal part of you designed for survival. Its job is to detect threats. In the wild, a threat was a tiger. In the modern world, a threat is a snide remark from a boss or a seen message with no reply. The amygdala doesn't know the difference. It triggers the same fight or flight response. This is the stimulus. For most people, the response follows the stimulus instantly. But there is a gap, a neurological sliver of time between when something happens to you and when you decide what it means. High-performance emotional control is found entirely within that gap. Pause creates power. When a stimulus hits, an insult, a crisis, a betrayal, your first job is to do nothing. Literally, nothing. Do not speak. Do not change your facial expression. Do not move your hands. This is the 3-second rule. By forcing a 3-second pause, you allow the electrical signal in your brain to move from the impulsive amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic, strategy, and long-term thinking. In those 3 seconds, you transition from a victim of circumstance to an observer of data. You aren't feeling the insult. You are observing the fact that someone is trying to provoke you. This shift is subtle, but it changes the entire power dynamic of the room. The power of non-reaction in the workplace. Imagine you are in a boardroom. A rival colleague points out a flaw in your presentation, hoping to see you squirm. The reactive person starts talking immediately, voice slightly higher than usual, explaining away the error. They look weak. They look caught. Now, imagine the observer. The observer hears the critique. They say nothing for 5 seconds. They look the colleague directly in the eye, not with anger, but with a calm, analytical curiosity. The silence stretches. It becomes uncomfortable, not for the observer, but for the attacker. Finally, the observer speaks. That's an interesting perspective. Let's look at the data behind that. Who has the power? The person who stayed still. Pause creates power. By refusing to be rattled, you have signaled that your internal state is not for sale. Training the observer mindset. How do you build this? You start by treating your life like a laboratory. Instead of being in your emotions, you must learn to stand beside them. When you feel a surge of frustration while waiting in a long line or dealing with a difficult client, practice the internal commentary. Say to yourself, I am noticing a sensation of heat in my chest. I am noticing an impulse to complain. I am observing the desire to be impatient. By labeling the emotion as a third-party object, you strip it of its authority. You are the sky. The emotions are just clouds passing through. The sky doesn't react to the clouds. The sky remains the sky. The silence of authority. We live in an age of overcommunication. We feel the need to fill every silence. But the person who can sit in silence without fidgeting or feeling the need to fix the mood is the person who commands the most respect. Observation requires quiet. If you are talking, you are not observing. If you are defending, you are not learning. The next time someone challenges you, try this. Give them a blank stare. Count to 5 in your head. Notice their body language. Notice how they begin to fidget when they realize their weapon didn't leave a mark on you. This is the beginning of your edge. You are no longer a participant in the chaos. You are the one documenting it. Chapter 1 Summary and Integration. The reflex is the enemy. Every time you react without thinking, you lose rank. The 3-second rule. Force the brain to move from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. Label the sensation. Don't say, I am angry. Say, I am observing anger. Non-reaction is dominance. Silence is the loudest thing you can say to an aggressor. Repetitive phrase for the chapter. Pause creates power. Chapter 2. Your triggers are your training ground. The gift of the aggressor. Most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid discomfort. They curate their social circles to avoid disagreement. They silence notifications to avoid stress. They stay away from people who rub them the wrong way. They think they are protecting their peace, but in reality, they are making themselves emotionally fragile. They are like athletes who refuse to lift anything heavier than a feather, wondering why they have no strength when life finally forces them to carry a burden. If you want the edge that no one sees, you must flip this script. You must stop viewing your triggers as obstacles and start viewing them as your most valuable training ground. When someone insults you, they aren't just being rude, they are handing you a free weight. When a client cancels at the last minute and your blood starts to boil, that isn't a bad day, it's a high-intensity interval training session for your nervous system. Every trigger is a test, and your job is to pass the test every single time. The muscle of emotional resistance. Emotional control is not a theoretical concept you learn in a book. It is a biological capacity you build through resistance. Just as a muscle requires micro tears to grow back stronger, your patience and composure require stressors to expand. Think about the person in your life who triggers you the most. Maybe it's a condescending boss. Maybe it's a family member who knows exactly which buttons to push because they were the ones who installed them. Most people dread seeing these individuals. You, however, should seek them out. Every time they say that one thing that usually makes you snap, and you choose to remain centered, you are performing a rep. You are thickening the neural pathways of restraint. You are proving that they no longer have the power to move your needle. If you can stay calm in the face of a person who is actively trying to unbalance you, you have achieved a level of freedom that 99% of the population will never know. You are no longer a slave to the behavior of others. Every trigger is a test. The 3 arenas of training. To master your triggers, you must recognize them across the 3 major arenas of your life: the professional, the personal, and the digital. The professional arena. This is where status is at stake. When a colleague speaks over you in a meeting, your ego wants to fight back to reclaim territory. Your trigger is the fear of looking weak. But remember, the person who fights for status usually looks the most desperate. The person who allows the interruption, waits for the noise to die down, and then continues as if the interruption was merely a minor breeze, that is the person who holds the status. The personal arena. This is where the stakes are highest because the emotions are deepest. Our families and partners know our history. They know our insecurities. When they trigger us, it feels like a betrayal. But this is your ultimate training ground. If you can maintain emotional control during a heated argument with a spouse, you can maintain it anywhere. If you can respond to a parent's criticism with a calm, "I hear what you're saying, I'll consider it," instead of a 30-minute defensive lecture, you have won. The digital arena. This is the lowest form of triggering, yet it consumes the most energy. An anonymous comment online. A political post that offends your sensibilities. A text message left on read. Getting angry at the digital world is like getting angry at the weather. It is a total waste of your life force. When you feel that urge to type a furious response, stop. Look at the phone. Realize that a piece of glass and plastic is controlling your heart rate. Put the phone down. You just won a rep. Tactical method. Effect labeling. How do you actually stop the fire once the match has been struck? You use a technique called effect labeling. Brain scans show that when people are shown an image of an angry face, their amygdala, the fear center, lights up. But when they are asked to name the emotion they are seeing, the activity shifts to the prefrontal cortex, the logic center. The moment you name an emotion, you begin to kill it. When you feel a trigger, don't say, "I am so pissed off." That identifies you as the anger. Instead, say, "I am experiencing a surge of irritation." By moving from "I am" to "I am experiencing," you create a gap. You become the scientist observing a chemical reaction in a test tube. You are looking at the anger, rather than looking through it. The controlled drill. To accelerate your progress, you should engage in deliberate discomfort. Seek out minor triggers on purpose to build your immunity. Go into the slowest checkout line at the grocery store and practice being the most relaxed person in the building. When someone says something factually wrong in a conversation, let it go. Don't correct them. Feel the itch to be right, and just let it itch until it stops. Take a cold shower. Your body will scream at you to get out. Your trigger is the cold. Stay in for 1 more minute. Command your breath to stay slow. If you can control your response to the cold, you can control your response to a crisis. If you can control your urge to be right in a meaningless conversation, you can control your urge to be defensive in a multimillion-dollar negotiation. The trap of self-pity. The greatest enemy of emotional training is the phrase, "They shouldn't have said that." Or, "It's not fair that I'm being treated this way." Fairness is irrelevant to the strategist. The world is what it is. People are who they are. When you complain that someone triggered you, you are admitting that you are a victim. You are saying that they are the master and you are the servant. Stop complaining about the weight of the barbell. The weight is there to make you strong. The person who disrespects you is doing you a favor. They are giving you a chance to see if your training is working. If you get angry, you failed the test. If you stay calm, you passed. Every trigger is a test. Chapter 2 Summary and Integration. Reframe the trigger. A trigger is not an insult, it is a rep in the gym of emotional control. Seek the resistance. Don't avoid the people who annoy you. Use them as your personal trainers. The power of naming. Use effect labeling to move the energy from your amygdala to your logic center. Practice micro-restraint. Use traffic jams, cold showers, and slow lines to build your baseline immunity. Kill the fairness narrative. You are not a victim of people's behavior. You are a student of your own reaction. Repetitive phrase for the chapter. Every trigger is a test. Chapter 3. Silence is strategic, not passive. The vacuum of power. In any interaction between two human beings, there is an invisible tug-of-war for the vibe of the room. Most people are terrified of a vacuum. We have been socialized to believe that silence is awkward, that a lull in conversation is a failure, and that if we aren't speaking, we aren't being heard. This social conditioning is a leash. The person who is uncomfortable with silence is a person who can be led. They are a person who can be pressured into saying things they didn't mean to say, agreeing to terms they didn't want to accept, and revealing secrets they should have kept hidden. If you want the edge that no one sees, you must master the void. You must realize that silence is not a lack of communication. It is one of the most powerful forms of communication available to the human species. It is a strategic tool, a psychological weapon, and a shield all wrapped into one. Silence gathers data. While everyone else is busy broadcasting their insecurities, you are busy downloading their blueprint. The psychology of the nervous talker. Why do people talk so much? It usually stems from a deep-seated need for validation or a fear of being judged. When there is a silence, the average person begins to feel an internal pressure, a psychological itch. To scratch that itch, they start talking. They over-explain their decisions. They justify their mistakes. They fill the air with filler words like like, and you know. This verbal clutter is a signal to the world that they are not comfortable in their own skin. It signals that they are trying to buy the approval of the listener. The master of emotional control, however, is comfortable in the stillness. They know that every word spoken is a potential vulnerability. Every sentence you utter gives the other person a piece of information they can use to map your mind. By withholding speech, you remain a mystery. You remain an enigma. You force the other person to wonder what you are thinking, and in that state of wondering, they become submissive to your presence. The negotiation table, a case study in restraint. Nowhere is the power of silence more evident than in the world of high-stakes negotiation. Imagine you are selling a business, or perhaps negotiating your salary. You state your price, "I'm looking for 150,000. The other person pauses. Now, the reactive person, the one who fears the vacuum, will immediately start backpedaling. After only 2 seconds of silence, they will say, "But, I'm flexible," or "That's just a starting point based on the market." In that moment, they have lost. They just negotiated against themselves. They felt the pressure of the silence and they broke. The strategist does the opposite. They state their price, 150,000. And then they stop. They don't look away. They don't fidget with their pen. They don't add a single syllable of justification. They let the silence sit in the air like a heavy fog. The other person feels the itch. They feel the pressure. Eventually, to break the tension, they will be the ones to speak. And because they are speaking out of a need to break tension, they will often reveal their true bottom line or offer a concession you didn't even ask for. Silence gathers data. It forces the other side to reveal their hand because they cannot stand the reflection of their own anxiety in your stillness. The 4-second rule for dominance. If you want to begin practicing this, start with the 4-second rule. In any conversation, when someone finishes speaking, do not respond immediately. Count to 4 in your head while maintaining soft, steady eye contact. In the first 2 seconds, the other person will think you are processing what they said. By the 3rd second, they will start to feel a slight bit of social pressure. By the 4th second, they will often keep talking. They will add more detail, clarify their point, or, most importantly, reveal their true motive. This is especially effective when someone asks you a difficult or confrontational question. If someone asks, "Why should we trust you with this project?" and you jump in with a list of 20 reasons, you look defensive. You look like you're trying to prove yourself. But if you look at them, wait 4 seconds, and then say 1 or 2 precise sentences, your words carry the weight of a sledgehammer. You have signaled that you are not intimidated by the question, and you are not desperate for their approval. Silence as a response to disrespect. One of the most powerful ways to use silence is as a response to an insult or a microaggression. When someone says something snarky or disrespectful, the common reaction is to snap back with a clever retort. This feels good for the ego, but it lowers your status. It shows that they got to you. It shows that you are playing their game on their court. The high-level response to disrespect is a cold, analytical silence. When they finish their joke or their insult, just look at them. Don't frown. Don't look hurt. Just look at them as if they are a strange biological specimen that you are trying to categorize. Let the silence stretch until they feel the need to explain the joke or walk back the comment. When they finally say, "Oh, I was just kidding," you have won. You have made them look small without saying a single word. You have maintained your emotional baseline while they have exposed their own lack of class. The digital void. In our hyper-connected world, silence also applies to your digital presence. We feel a need to reply to every text instantly, to comment on every post, to be seen as active. But constant availability is the death of perceived value. If you are always available to respond within 30 seconds, you are signaling that your time has no value. You are signaling that you are reactive to the whims of your notifications. Strategic silence in the digital world means choosing when to engage. It means letting a text sit for 3 hours while you do your deep work. It means not feeling the need to correct someone's wrong opinion in a group chat. When you are slow to respond, your responses carry more weight. People begin to respect your time because you have shown that you respect it first. You are not a puppet to the ping. The internal benefit, clarity and precision. Beyond the tactical advantage over others, silence provides a massive internal advantage. It gives you time to think. The reactive person's words are often messy. They say things they regret. They use loose language that can be used against them later. But the person who uses silence as a buffer ensures that when they do speak, their words are precise. Think of your words as ammunition. The reactive person is using a machine gun, spraying bullets everywhere and hitting nothing. The strategist is a sniper. They spend 90% of their time in silence, observing, measuring the wind, and waiting for the perfect moment. When they finally pull the trigger, when they finally speak, the result is definitive. Silence gathers data. It allows you to see the patterns that others miss because they are too busy listening to the sound of their own voices. Chapter 3: Summary and Integration. Embrace the vacuum. Recognize that the awkward silence is only awkward for the weak. For you, it is an opportunity. The 4-second rule. Practice waiting 4 seconds before responding in every conversation today. Notice how much more information people give you. The look, when disrespected, use silence and eye contact instead of a verbal comeback. Let them drown in the tension they created. Negotiate with stillness. In any deal, the person who speaks less after an offer is made usually wins. Protect your words. Treat your speech like a limited resource. Only use it when it serves a specific strategic goal. Repetitive phrase for the chapter. Silence gathers data. Chapter 4. Detach from the need to be understood. The exhaustion of the explanation. Think about the last time you made a decision that someone else didn't like. Perhaps you set a boundary with a friend, or you turned down a social invitation, or you implemented a new, stricter policy at work. What was your immediate internal reaction when you saw their face drop or heard the edge of resentment in their voice? If you are like most people, you felt a frantic, almost itchy urge to explain yourself. You started talking. You gave 3 different reasons why you had to do it. You tried to show them your heart. You tried to prove that you weren't the bad guy. In that moment, you weren't communicating, you were begging. You were begging for their permission to feel okay about your own decision. You were handing them the keys to your emotional well-being and saying, I can't be at peace until you agree that I am right. If you want the edge that no one sees, you must kill this urge. You must learn to walk away while being completely misunderstood. You must become comfortable being the villain in someone else's distorted narrative. Approval is expensive. It costs you your authority, your time, and your soul. The authority gap. There is a direct, inverse relationship between how much you explain yourself and how much authority you possess. In any hierarchy, the person at the bottom explains everything. They have to justify their time, their mistakes, and their very existence. The person at the top, however, provides direction, not justification. When a CEO makes a strategic pivot, they don't spend 3 hours trying to make sure every entry-level employee likes the idea. They state the direction, provide the why that serves the mission, and move forward. When you over-explain, you are signaling to the room that you are not sure of yourself. You are inviting others to debate your decision. You are saying, here are my reasons. Please feel free to tear them apart. If you want to be seen as a leader, you must speak with finality. If you decide that a project is over, say, we are moving in a different direction. Thank you for your work on this. Stop there. Do not add, because, the budget is tight and I really feel like maybe. The moment you add the maybe, you have invited a counterargument. You have bled authority. The manipulation of I don't understand. One of the most effective tools used by manipulators is the feigned lack of understanding. If a toxic person knows that you have a deep-seated need to be gotten, they will use that against you. When you set a boundary, they will say, I just don't get why you're being so cold. Or, I don't understand how you could do this to me. Because you are addicted to being understood, you will spend the next 2 hours trying to clarify your position. You will talk until you are blue in the face. And at the end of it, they will say, I still don't get it. They aren't confused. They are consuming your energy. They are using your need for validation to keep you trapped in a loop of justification. The master of emotional control sees this trap and refuses to enter it. When someone says, I don't understand why you're doing this, the master simply replies, I realize you don't. Regardless, this is the decision. Approval is expensive. Don't spend your life force trying to buy something that isn't for sale. The villain milestone. You will know you are becoming emotionally elite when you can handle someone being genuinely angry at you without feeling the need to fix their mood. Most of us are peace fixers. We see someone upset and we feel a biological urge to smooth things over. We want to say, don't be mad, let me explain. But high-level emotional control requires you to let people sit in their own emotions. If you are doing what is right for your mission, your family, or your business, some people will be unhappy. Some people will call you selfish. Some will call you arrogant. Let them. Their internal narrative is their responsibility, not yours. If you are constantly trying to manage how others perceive you, you aren't living your life. You are performing a play for an audience that isn't even paying for tickets. True power is the ability to say, "You are allowed to be wrong about me," and then going back to work. Strategic detachment in the workplace. Let's apply this to a professional setting. Imagine you are a manager and you have to deny a vacation request because of a critical deadline. The low control manager says, "Look, I'm so sorry. I know you wanted to go to the lake, and I feel terrible, but we have this deadline and the boss is really breathing down my neck, so I just can't make it work this time. I hope you're not too upset." The high control manager says, "I can't approve that time off for those dates. We have the project launch that week and I need the full team on deck. We can look at the week after the launch instead." Notice the difference. The first manager is seeking a pardon. They are trying to get the employee to say, "It's okay, I understand." The second manager is providing information. They have detached from the employee's reaction. They aren't being mean, they are being precise. When you detach from the need to be understood, you gain clarity. You stop cluttering your messages with emotional padding and start speaking with the weight of someone who knows what they are doing. The ghost of your reputation. A lot of our need to be understood comes from a fear of our reputation being tarnished. We think, if I don't explain this, people will think I'm incompetent, lazy, or mean. Here is the cold truth. People will think what they want to think based on their own biases, their own insecurities, and their own bad days. You cannot control the ghost of your reputation that lives in other people's heads. The only thing you can control is your output and your integrity. If you spend 20% of your day managing your image, that is 20% of your day you aren't spending on your impact. The most respected people in the world are often the most polarizing. They didn't get there by making sure everyone understood them. They got there by being so consistent in their actions that eventually, the world had no choice but to adjust to them. Practical exercise. The no explanation day. To build the muscle of detachment, I want you to practice a no explanation day. For 24 hours, when you say no to something, or when you state a preference, do not add the word because. No, I can't take on that extra task right now. I'd prefer to eat at the other restaurant. I'm going to head home now. Watch what happens in your body. You will feel a surge of anxiety. You will feel the itch to add a reason. You will want to say, "I'm going home because I have a headache." Don't. Just say you're going home. Witness how others react. You will be surprised to find that most people actually respect the brevity. They see it as a sign of confidence. They stop pushing back because there is no reason for them to argue with. Approval is expensive. Every time you don't explain yourself, you are saving your currency for things that actually matter. The freedom of being a mystery. When you stop explaining, you become a black box. People can't figure you out easily, and as we discussed in Chapter 3, that uncertainty creates a natural hierarchy where you are at the top. If people don't know your every thought and every motivation, they can't manipulate you. They can't find the leverage point to make you feel guilty. You become an unmovable object. You aren't being secretive. You are being selective. You are choosing to be understood only by those who have earned the right to your intimacy. For everyone else, the colleagues, the acquaintances, the critics, your why is none of their business. Chapter 4 Summary and Integration. Stop the fixing reflex. When someone is upset by your decision, let them be upset. It is not your job to manage their internal weather. The power of because less speech. Start stating your decisions without providing a list of justifications. Recognize weaponized confusion. Don't fall for the trap of someone saying they don't understand just to keep you talking. Be the villain. Accept that in some people's stories, you will be the bad guy. Carry on anyway. Prioritize impact over image. Stop spending energy on how you are perceived and start spending it on what you are producing. Repetitive phrase for the chapter. Approval is expensive. Chapter 5. Control the story in your head. The internal architect. Most people believe they are reacting to the world. They think that when a car cuts them off, the car made them angry. They think that when a partner forgets an anniversary, the partner made them sad. They believe there is a straight line between an external event and an internal feeling. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of human biology. Between the world and your heart, there is a middleman. That middleman is the storyteller, the narrator in your head that interprets every event before you are allowed to feel it. The event itself is neutral. It has no emotional charge. It is simply data. The emotion only enters the room when the storyteller gives the data a meaning. If you want the edge that no one sees, you must stop trying to control the world and start controlling the script. You must move from being the audience of your thoughts to being the lead editor. Because the truth is absolute, interpretation creates emotion. The fact versus the story. To master your internal narrative, you must learn to separate the fact from the story. A fact is something that can be proven in a court of law. It is objective. Fact: your boss didn't say good morning when she walked past your desk. Fact: your bank account has $42 in it. Fact: the client cancelled the meeting at 9:01 a.m. A story is the meaning you attach to those facts. Story: my boss is planning to fire me. Story: I'm a failure who will never be wealthy. Story: the client doesn't respect my time and thinks I'm a low priority. Notice the difference. The fact is harmless. It's just information. The story is where the cortisol, the anxiety, and the rage live. Most people live 99% of their lives reacting to stories they made up themselves. They are suffering from imaginary wounds. The strategist, however, looks at the fact and refuses to write a story until they have more data. When the boss doesn't say good morning, the strategist thinks, fact, no greeting. Possible reasons: she is distracted, she had a bad morning, she didn't see me. I will proceed as normal. By sticking to the fact, they remain calm. By remaining calm, they remain effective. Interpretation creates emotion. The victim narrative versus the strategic narrative. There are two primary ways to narrate your life: the victim narrative and the strategic narrative. The victim narrative is the default setting for the majority of the population. It is built on the word why. Why is this happening to me? Why is it so hard? Why do people treat me this way? This narrative frames you as a passive recipient of the world's cruelty. It feels good to the ego because it absolves you of responsibility, but it is poison for your power. If you are a victim, you have no agency. If you have no agency, you have no control. The strategic narrative is built on the word what. What does this situation require? What is the most effective move right now? What can I learn from this resistance? Imagine you are passed over for a promotion. The victim story says, the system is rigged. My hard work doesn't matter. They don't like me. Result: bitterness, decreased performance, and a loss of respect. The strategic story says, the decision makers currently value a different skill set than the one I demonstrated. I need to identify that gap or find a market that values my current output. Result: focus, a clear plan of action, and maintained dignity. The event didn't change. Only the story did. And yet, the first person is defeated, while the second person is just getting started. Reframing, the art of the mental flip. Reframing is the tactical process of changing the story to serve your goals. It is not positive thinking. Positive thinking is often delusional. It's telling yourself it's sunny when it's pouring rain. Reframing is effective thinking. It's acknowledging the rain and deciding it's a perfect opportunity to test your waterproof gear. When a setback occurs, you must perform a mental flip. Old frame: I lost the deal. I wasted 3 months of work. New frame: I just paid 3 months of tuition to learn exactly how this specific industry handles objections. I am now more dangerous than I was yesterday. Old frame: this person is being incredibly difficult and trying to provoke me. New frame: this person is a high-level sparring partner. If I can keep my cool with them, I can keep my cool with anyone. This is an elite training session. When you reframe, you take the power back. You are no longer at the mercy of events. You are in use of events. You are the architect. Interpretation creates emotion. The biology of the narrative. This isn't just mindset talk. It is biology. When you tell yourself a victim story, your brain perceives a threat. It releases cortisol, which shuts down your prefrontal cortex, your center for creative problem solving and logic. You literally become stupider when you tell yourself a victim story. When you tell yourself a strategic story, your brain stays in a state of challenge rather than threat. You keep access to your full cognitive range. You can see the exits. You can see the opportunities that the emotional person is too blinded by rage to notice. The person who controls their narrative is the only person in the room who is actually thinking clearly. Everyone else is just hallucinating based on their fears. Practical tool: the narrative audit. To master this, you must conduct a narrative audit 3 times a day. Stop what you are doing and ask yourself, what story am I telling myself right now about my current situation? If you find yourself feeling anxious, angry, or overwhelmed, you have found a story. Write it down. Then, look at it and ask, is this a fact or a story? 90% of the time, it will be a story. Once you identify it as a story, you have the power to edit it. Strip the adjectives away. Strip the intent you've assigned to other people away. Get back to the facts. Once you are back at the facts, ask, what is the most effective story I can tell about these facts? Not the nicest story, but the most effective one. The one that keeps you in the driver's seat. The so what method. One of the fastest ways to kill a negative internal narrative is the so what method. Narrative: if I fail this presentation, people will think I'm not ready for leadership. Response: so what? If they think that, I will work on the specific areas they critiqued and prove them wrong in 6 months. Their opinion is a data point, not a death sentence. Narrative: he hasn't texted me back in 2 days. He must be losing interest. Response: so what? If he is losing interest, I would rather know now so I can stop investing my time. My value doesn't change based on his reply speed. The so what method drains the drama out of the story. It reminds the storyteller in your head that you are resilient enough to handle any outcome. When you realize you can survive the worst-case version of the story loses its power to make you emotional. The power of the yet. A single word can change an entire internal narrative. The word yet. I don't know how to handle this pressure is a victim story. I don't know how to handle this pressure yet is a strategic story. Yet implies that the current state is temporary and that you are in a process of mastery. It moves the story from a static, this is who I am, to a dynamic, this is what I am learning. The standard of the strategist. The most elite version of you does not hope for a world without problems. They hope for a mind that can narrate any problem into a strategic advantage. When you walk into a room, you aren't just bringing your skills and your clothes. You are bringing your narrative. If your narrative is one of self-mastery and calm observation, people will feel it. They will sense that you are not easily moved because you are the one holding the pen. You cannot control the weather, but you are the absolute master of the story you tell about the storm. Chapter 5: Summary and Integration. The middleman. Remember that events don't cause emotions, interpretations do. Fact versus story. Practice stripping away your interpretations until only the objective facts remain. Choose agency. Replace "why is this happening" with "what does this require?" The mental flip. Deliberately reframe setbacks as tuition or sparring. The audit. Periodically check your internal monologue. If the story makes you weak, edit the script. Repetitive phrase for the chapter. Interpretation creates emotion. Chapter 6. Master your emotional baseline. The pendulum of the amateur. Most people live their lives on a psychological pendulum. When things go well, a big sale, a new relationship, a compliment from a superior, they swing into a state of euphoria. They are on top of the world. They are manic, loud, and overconfident. But because the pendulum swung so far in one direction, it is biologically destined to swing just as far in the other. When the deal falls through, the relationship hits a snag, or the criticism comes, these same people crash into a pit of despair, anxiety, and self-doubt. They are slaves to the swing. They spend their entire lives reacting to the momentum of external events. The elite performer, the one with the edge no one sees, has cut the string of the pendulum. They do not seek peak states or highs. They seek a steady, unshakable emotional baseline. They know that the person who gets too high on the wins is the same person who will be destroyed by the losses. If you want to control the room, you must first control the resting heart rate of your soul. You must understand that consistency beats intensity. What is the emotional baseline? Your baseline is your emotional home. It is the state you return to when no one is watching and nothing is happening. For the average person, the baseline is a low-level hum of anxiety, a waiting for the other shoe to drop feeling. For others, it's a baseline of irritability or a baseline of seeking distraction. If your baseline is set to anxious, any small stressor will push you into a full-blown panic. You are starting from a deficit. But if you can train your baseline to be neutral, a state of calm, alert, and detached readiness, then even a massive crisis will only move you a few inches from center. You don't need to be a hero during the crisis. You need to be a professional who has spent the last 6 months cultivating a baseline that is impossible to rattle. Consistency beats intensity. The myth of getting fired up. We live in a culture that worships intensity. We are told to get hyped, to find our passion, and to give 110%. In the world of emotional control, this is a recipe for disaster. Think about a surgeon or a bomb disposal technician. Do you want them fired up? Do you want them hyped and full of adrenaline? No. You want them at their baseline. You want them cool, calculated, and steady. Adrenaline narrows your vision. It makes you move faster than you can think. It makes you prone to the flinch. High-level leadership and high-stakes decision-making require a wide lens, not a narrow one. By maintaining a steady baseline, you keep your peripheral vision, both literally and metaphorically, open. You see the nuances that the intense person misses. You stay in the cool zone where logic still functions. The science of the steady state. Maintaining a baseline is a physical act. It involves your autonomic nervous system, specifically the balance between the sympathetic, fight or flight, and parasympathetic, rest and digest, branches. Most people are sympathetic dominant. They are constantly on. Their breathing is shallow, their shoulders are tight, and their gaze is fixed. They are ready to react, which means they are ready to be manipulated. To master your baseline, you must learn to trigger the parasympathetic response at will. You must train your body to stay off even when the world is screaming on. The 60-second reset. The most effective way to maintain your baseline throughout a chaotic day is the 60-second reset. Every 2 hours, regardless of what you are doing, you must stop. Relax the jaw. Tension starts here. If your teeth are clenched, your brain thinks it's in a fight. Drop the jaw. Drop the shoulders. Physical tension is a feedback loop for emotional stress. Break the loop. Exhale longer than you inhale. Breathe in for 4 seconds. Breathe out for 8. This sends a direct signal to the vagus nerve to slow down the heart rate and lower cortisol. When you do this consistently, you are resetting your baseline. You are preventing the stress stacking that leads to an emotional breakdown at 5 p.m. You are maintaining the standard. Consistency beats intensity. The neutral response to success. This is the hardest part for most to accept. To master your baseline, you must also temper your reactions to success. When you win, when you get the praise, when you hit the goal, don't throw a party in your mind. Don't let your ego inflate. When people congratulate you, say, "Thank you, I appreciate that." Back to work. If you let the highs get to you, you are giving the world permission to let the lows get to you too. By remaining neutral in the face of victory, you signal to your own subconscious and to everyone around you that you expected to win. You signal that winning is your standard, not a lucky accident. This builds a psychological gravity that people find magnetic. They want to be around the person who is the same in the storm as they are in the sunshine. Stress inoculation. Training the floor, not the ceiling. How do we lower our baseline response to stress? Through stress inoculation. Think of it like a vaccine. You introduce a small, controlled amount of the virus, stress, so your system learns how to stay calm when the real threat arrives. This is why elite units like the SEALs or SAS train in miserable conditions. They aren't just learning skills, they are lowering their baseline. They are making miserable feel normal. You can do this in your daily life. Cold exposure. Getting into a 40-degree shower or ice bath is a direct attack on your baseline. Your body panics. It wants to gasp. It wants to jump out. Your job is to stay in and keep your breath slow. If you can command your body to stay calm when it feels like it's freezing, a rude email from a client will feel like nothing. Physical exhaustion. Train your body until it wants to quit, and then stay for one more set. Watch your mind try to narrate a crisis. Stay at your baseline. The annoyance practice. Deliberately place yourself in situations that usually irritate you, a slow line, a crowded bus, and make it your mission to have the lowest heart rate in the vicinity. You aren't trying to reach a peak. You are trying to raise the floor of what you can handle without losing your cool. Emotional hygiene. Protecting the baseline. Your baseline is also affected by what you consume. If you wake up and immediately check the news or social media, you are injecting a massive dose of outrage culture and comparison into your system. You are starting your day at a high sympathetic state. Mastering your baseline requires strict emotional hygiene. The first hour, no inputs, no news, no emails, no social media. Use this time to set your internal tone through silence or movement. The information diet. If a piece of information doesn't help you achieve your mission or improve your character, it is noise. Noise raises the baseline. Cut it out. The circle. You are the average of the 5 emotional baselines you spend the most time around. If you are surrounded by people who are constantly venting, complaining, or panicking, your baseline will inevitably rise to match theirs. You must be ruthless with who you allow into your psychological space. Consistency over intensity. The amateur thinks they need a breakthrough. They think they need to find a way to be extraordinary. The strategist knows that being ordinary with 100% consistency is the most extraordinary thing in the world. The person who can maintain a 4-tenths emotional intensity through a 10-tenths crisis is the person who wins. They don't burn out. They don't make impulsive errors. They don't give away their power through emotional leaks. They are the standard. When everyone else is vibrating with fear or excitement, the person with the mastered baseline is the only one who can actually see the path forward. Chapter 6 Summary and Integration. Kill the pendulum. Stop chasing the highs so you don't get destroyed by the lows. Neutral is the power state. Train yourself to return to a state of calm, alert readiness as your default. The 60-second reset. Use physical cues, jaw, shoulders, breath, to prevent stress from stacking. Temper your wins. Treat success with the same detached professionalism as you treat failure. Stress inoculation. Use cold, exercise, and minor annoyances to raise your floor. Repetitive phrase for the chapter. Consistency beats intensity. Chapter 7. Let others be emotional, you stay precise. The power of contrast. Imagine a storm at sea. The waves are 30 feet high, the wind is screaming, and the rain is blinding. In the middle of that chaos, there is a lighthouse. The lighthouse does not shout back at the wind. It does not try to outmuscle the waves. It simply stands. Its light is steady, its foundation is unmovable, and because of its stillness, it is the only thing that matters to the ships lost in the dark. In every human interaction, there is an emotional temperature. When a situation becomes heated, whether it's a boardroom argument, a domestic dispute, or a high-stakes crisis, most people become mirrors. If one person raises their voice, the other raises theirs. If one person becomes frantic, the other catches the panic. This is a biological reflex called emotional contagion, and it is the death of authority. The person with the edge no one sees does not mirror. They provide the contrast. When the world gets loud, they get quiet. When the world gets blurry, they get sharp. They understand the most fundamental law of social dynamics. The person who remains the most certain and the most composed will eventually dictate the reality of the room. Calm is leverage. The mirroring trap. To master this chapter, you must first understand why it is so hard to stay calm when others are losing it. We have mirror neurons in our brains designed to help us empathize and bond with others. These neurons are why you yawn when someone else yawns. But in a conflict, these neurons become a liability. They try to sync your heart rate with the angry person across from you. When you mirror someone's anger or anxiety, you have essentially handed them the keys to your house. You are telling them, your emotional state is more powerful than mine, so I will join you in yours. The strategist views an emotional person not as an opponent to be defeated, but as a storm to be outlasted. You don't fight a storm, you wait for it to run out of rain. While they are burning through their energy, throwing verbal clubs and making impulsive statements, you are saving your energy. You are staying precise. The scalpel versus the club. Emotional people use clubs. They speak in broad, blunt, and inaccurate strokes. They use words like always, never, everything, and everyone. You always overlook my contributions. This entire project is a disaster. No one ever listens to me. These are clubs. They are heavy, they are sloppy, and they are easy to dodge if you stay calm. The strategist responds with a scalpel. A scalpel is precise, sharp, and cuts through the noise to find the truth. You don't respond to the always or the never. You ignore the emotion and address the data. Emotional club, you always overlook my contributions. Strategic scalpel, which specific contribution are you referring to from this morning's meeting? Emotional club, this entire project is a disaster. Strategic scalpel, which of the 3 current milestones are you most concerned about right now? By being precise, you force the emotional person to stop using their lizard brain, the amygdala, and start using their human brain, the prefrontal cortex. You are literally dragging them into your world of logic. And because you are the one who is comfortable in that world, you hold all the cards. Calm is leverage. Tactical empathy without absorption. There is a common misconception that staying precise means being a cold, unfeeling robot. That is a mistake. If you act like a robot, you will only infuriate the emotional person further, causing the situation to escalate. Instead, you use tactical empathy. This is the ability to recognize and name the other person's emotion without catching it yourself. You build a glass wall in your mind. You can see the emotion, you can acknowledge it, but it cannot touch you. The phrase to use is, it sounds like, or it seems like. It sounds like you're feeling frustrated because the deadline was moved. It seems like you feel that your perspective wasn't heard in the last session. When you label their emotion, 2 things happen. First, they feel heard, which often causes their cortisol spike to drop. Second, you have reinforced your role as the observer. You aren't in the fight. You are the one refereeing the fight. You are the one who is cool enough to analyze their feelings while they are still drowning in them. The power shift in conflict. The moment of the power shift occurs when the emotional person realizes that their outbursts are having 0 effect on you. When someone is shouting or being aggressive, they are looking for a hook. They want to hook your ego so they can drag you down into the mud with them. If they can make you angry, they have justified their own anger. If they can make you cry, they have proven their power over you. But if you simply look at them, blinking slowly, body relaxed, voice lower than theirs, the hook has nowhere to land. They will continue to escalate for a moment, getting louder and more frantic, but then they will hit a wall of silence. In that silence, they will suddenly become aware of how they look. They will see their own reflection in your calm eyes, and they will see someone who is out of control. In that moment, the hierarchy of the room shifts. The person who is out of control is always at the bottom. The person who is precise is always at the top. Precise language, the weapon of the calm. In a crisis, your choice of words determines your level of authority. Emotional people use leakage words, words that show they are being moved by the event. I'm really worried about this. This is insane. I can't believe they did this. The strategist uses high-certainty language. They strip away the veris, the realis, and the insanes. They speak in short, declarative sentences. The situation has changed. Here is our next move. That is an unexpected variable. Let's look at the options. I hear your concern. Here is what we are going to do. By being precise with your language, you provide a railing for others to hold on to. In a storm, people don't look for the person who is screaming the loudest. They look for the person who seems to know where the exit is. Precision is the signal of expertise. Calm is leverage. Case study: the workplace saboteur. Imagine a meeting where a saboteur tries to embarrass you in front of the executives. They use an emotional hook. "I'm just really disappointed that you didn't think to include the marketing team's feedback. It feels like a major oversight that's going to cost us." The reactive response: "I did think of it. I emailed you 3 times and you never replied. It's not my fault." Result: you look defensive, petty, and emotional. The precise response: "Wait 3 seconds. I hear your disappointment. Looking at the project timeline, we had a window for feedback between the 5th and the 12th. I didn't receive a response during that window, so I moved the project to the next phase to hit the launch date. If you have specific data points that require a pivot now, please present them." Notice what happened. You didn't defend. You didn't get angry. You used the scalpel of facts to cut through their club of disappointment. You stayed precise, and in doing so, you made the other person look like they were the ones who missed the deadline. The thermostat effect. We discussed in the opening that you are the thermostat, not the thermometer. This is where that principle is put to the test. If you stay precise and calm long enough, the other person will eventually cool down to match your temperature. It is very difficult to keep screaming at someone who is responding with a quiet, measured voice. It feels ridiculous. It feels UN-calibrated. By refusing to join their chaos, you force them to join your order. You have controlled the room without ever raising your voice. Chapter 7: Summary and Integration. Refuse to mirror. Recognize the biological urge to match someone's energy and deliberately choose the opposite. The scalpel versus the club. Ignore broad, emotional statements. Focus on specific, data-driven questions. Tactical empathy. Label their emotion, "It seems like you're feeling," to lower their defenses without absorbing their stress. Lower your voice. When others get louder, you get quieter and slower. This forces them to focus on you. Ignore the hook. Don't defend your ego. Stick to the mission and the facts. Repetitive phrase for the chapter: calm is leverage. Chapter 8: Discipline your impulses daily. The hero myth. Most people suffer from what I call the hero myth. They believe that emotional control is something you summon from the depths of your soul only when a major crisis arrives. They think they can spend their daily lives being impulsive, reactive, and undisciplined, but that when the big moment comes, the high-stakes negotiation, the sudden layoff, the personal tragedy, they will magically transform into a pillar of stoic strength. This is a dangerous delusion. You do not rise to the level of your expectations. You fall to the level of your training. If you cannot control your impulse to check your phone while driving, you will not control your impulse to panic when your business is failing. If you cannot control your urge to snap at a slow cashier, you will not control your urge to get defensive when a board of directors questions your integrity. Emotional mastery is not a switch you flip, it is a muscle you build. And like any muscle, it is built through the repetitive, often boring, daily discipline of small restraints. You win the big wars by winning the small battles that no one else sees. Win the small battles. The anatomy of an impulse. What is an impulse? Biologically, it is a short circuit. It is your primal brain demanding an immediate hit of dopamine or a quick release of tension. An impulse is an itch that your brain demands you scratch right now. The itch to check social media when you're bored. The itch to eat something sweet when you're stressed. The itch to interrupt someone because you have a great point. The itch to complain because things aren't going your way. Every time you scratch the itch, you reinforce the short circuit. You are telling your brain that it is the master and you are the servant. You are training yourself to be a reactive creature. But every time you feel the impulse and choose to sit with the discomfort without acting on it, you are rewiring your nervous system. You are moving the seat of power from your primal urges to your conscious will. The silent killer of authority. Complaining. The most common and destructive daily impulse is the urge to complain. We think complaining is just venting, but in reality, it is a public confession of weakness. When you complain, you are signaling to the world that you are at the mercy of your environment. You are saying, "I am not okay because the weather is bad, the traffic is slow, or my boss is mean." You are admitting that external factors have the power to dictate your internal state. The strategist views complaining as a leak. It is a waste of energy that could be spent on solving the problem or maintaining composure. If you can't change the situation, complaining is useless. If you can change the situation, complaining is a waste of time that should be spent on the solution. For the next week, make it a small battle to never complain out loud. If you feel the urge, swallow it. Feel the tension of the unsaid complaint in your throat and let it dissolve. By doing this, you are building a containment field around your emotions. You are becoming a person who is self-contained and self-reliant. The digital leash, reclaiming your attention. In the modern world, the greatest training ground for impulse control is that rectangular device in your pocket. Your smartphone is a reactivity machine. It is designed by the smartest engineers in the world to trigger your impulses. The average person checks their phone 150 times a day. Most of those checks are not because of a specific need, but because of a twitch. They feel a microsecond of boredom or anxiety, and their hand moves to the phone before they even realize they've made a choice. If you want the edge no one sees, you must break the digital leash. The 10-minute delay. When you feel the urge to check your phone, look at your watch. Tell yourself, I can check it in 10 minutes. This delay breaks the stimulus-response loop. It forces the prefrontal cortex to take over. Notification 0. Turn off every notification that isn't from a human being. The likes, the news alerts, the app updates, these are all attempts by machines to trigger your impulses. Do not allow a machine to dictate when you give away your attention. The slow reply. We live in an era of instant gratification. People expect a reply to a text in seconds. By replying instantly, you are training yourself to be reactive. Practice the strategic delay. Even if you see the message, wait. Choose the time of your engagement. By controlling your phone, you are training your brain to resist the siren song of immediate dopamine. Win the small battles. The urge for reassurance. One of the subtlest impulses is the need for reassurance. When we make a decision, we often feel a pang of insecurity. We want to ask a friend, do you think I did the right thing? Or we want to check with a colleague, was that email okay? This impulse is a search for an emotional crutch. Every time you seek reassurance, you are weakening your own inner compass. You are telling yourself that your own judgment isn't enough. The strategist practices internal validation. Before you ask for an opinion, sit with your own decision for 24 hours. Own the possibility that you might be wrong. Own the risk. If you can handle the weight of your own choices without needing someone to pat you on the back, you become dangerous. You become a person who can't be swayed by the shifting winds of public opinion. The wait-and-see method for speech. In social situations, the most common impulse is the urge to speak. We want to be funny, we want to be right, or we want to fix a silence. Try this daily discipline. In any group conversation, be the last person to speak. While others are competing for the spotlight, you are observing. You are noticing who is trying too hard, who is lying, and who is actually in power. By the time you speak, you have more information than anyone else in the room. Your words will be more surgical and more impactful because they weren't born from an impulse to be heard, but from a strategic decision to be effective. Win the small battles. The daily checklist for emotional restraint. To build the edge, you must have a daily training regimen. Here is your checklist of small battles to win every single day. The morning resistance. Do not check your phone for the first 30 minutes after waking up. Own your own mind before you let the world in. The physical anchor. If you feel an impulse to get angry or reactive, physically plant your feet on the ground and feel the floor. Do not move or speak until the surge of the impulse passes, usually about 90 seconds. The no complaint policy. Go the entire day without voicing a single grievance about things you cannot control. The one bite rule. If you are eating something you know you shouldn't, or if you're reaching for that second drink, stop for 60 seconds and ask, am I eating this, or is the impulse eating me? The silent observation. In at least one meeting or conversation today, speak 50% less than you usually do. The cumulative power of restraint. You might think, How does not checking my phone for 10 minutes help me lead a company through a crisis? The answer is neural plasticity. Every time you resist a small impulse, you are physically changing the structure of your brain. You are strengthening the inhibitory pathways. Think of it like an architect building a dam. You don't wait for the flood to start building. You lay one brick at a time, every day, in the dry season. Then, when the flood comes, when the big emotional crisis hits, the dam is already there. It doesn't require effort to stay calm because your brain has been trained to default to restraint. The person who has win the small battles as their daily mantra becomes an unshakable force. While the rest of the world is chasing every shiny object and reacting to every minor slight, you are moving with the steady, unstoppable momentum of a glacier. You are the only one who is truly free, because you are the only one who is in control of your own impulses. Chapter 8 Summary and Integration. Kill the hero myth. Emotional control is built in the mundane, not the monumental. Label the itch. Recognize impulses as biological short circuits, not commands you must follow. Silence the complaints. Every complaint is a leak of power. Close the valve. Delay the digital. Use your phone as a training tool for resistance, not a source of reaction. Stop seeking reassurance. Build your own inner compass by sitting with the weight of your decisions. Repetitive phrase for the chapter. Win the small battles. Chapter 9. Pressure reveals your emotional rank. The truth serum of the soul. There is a common saying that pressure builds character. This is a lie. Pressure does not build anything. It merely reveals what is already there. Pressure is the ultimate truth serum. When things are going well, when the economy is strong, your relationships are smooth, and your health is vibrant, it is easy to appear composed. It is easy to be the calm person when there is nothing to be calm about. But when the stakes rise, when the deadline is missed, when the bank account hits zero, or when a personal tragedy strikes, the mask of polite society falls away. In that moment of intense heat, you are stripped down to your training. If your training is reactive, you will panic. If your training is disciplined, you will act. In any group of people, a family, a sports team, or a multi-billion-dollar corporation, there is an invisible hierarchy that has nothing to do with job titles or bank balances. It is the emotional rank. Your rank is determined by one factor alone: how much pressure you can handle before you lose your composure. The person who can handle the most pressure without flinching is the person of the highest rank. They are the person the room will eventually follow, because pressure exposes preparation. The biological reveal. To understand why pressure is so revealing, we have to look at what happens to your brain during a crisis. When you perceive a high-stakes threat, your body initiates a sympathetic surge. Adrenaline floods your system, your heart rate spikes, and your tunnel vision kicks in. In this state, you lose access to your complex, nuanced thoughts. You lose the ability to act or pretend. You revert to your most deeply ingrained habits. If you have spent your life winning the small battles of Chapter 8, your default habit will be to pause and observe. If you have spent your life reacting to every notification and every slight, your default habit will be to scream, cry, or run. This is why you cannot fake emotional control in a crisis. You are either prepared, or you are exposed. There is no middle ground. When the world starts to shake, everyone looks for the person who isn't shaking. That person's emotional rank is immediately established. They don't have to ask for authority. It is handed to them by the collective instinct of the group. The pilot and the storm, a lesson in rank. Think of the legendary pilots who have saved failing aircraft, like Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger landing on the Hudson River. When both engines were lost to a bird strike, he had only seconds to decide the fate of 155 people. Listen to the cockpit voice recordings. There is no screaming. There is no, "Why is this happening to me?" There is no panic. There is only the clinical, precise execution of a checklist. "My aircraft," he said. "Get the QRH," he said. "We're gonna be in the Hudson," he told the tower. His voice remained at the same pitch and tempo as if he were ordering a cup of coffee. That is the pinnacle of emotional rank. Because he had spent decades practicing for the worst-case scenario in simulators and in his mind, the pressure did not break him, it simply activated his training. Pressure exposes preparation. The social cost of low rank. When you lose your cool under pressure, you are effectively demoting yourself in the eyes of everyone around you. Imagine a manager who finds out a major client is leaving. If that manager starts pacing, raising their voice, and blaming their subordinates, they have just signaled to their entire team, "I am not equipped to handle this reality." Even if they are the boss on paper, their emotional rank has just plummeted to the bottom. Their team will never truly trust their leadership again, because they have seen that the captain is the first one to panic when the ship takes on water. Contrast this with the manager who hears the news, takes a breath, and says, "All right. This is a significant setback. Everyone in the conference room in 10 minutes. We're going to map out our retention strategy and our new lead gen plan." This person hasn't fixed the problem yet, but they have secured the room. They have maintained their rank. People feel safe following them because they represent a stable reality in an unstable moment. Stress inoculation, the practice of discomfort. How do you ensure that when the pressure comes, it reveals a diamond and not dust? You must practice stress inoculation. In medicine, a vaccine introduces a weakened version of a virus so the body can build defenses. In emotional mastery, you must introduce controlled stressors into your life so your mind can build a composure response. If you live a life of total comfort, you are setting yourself up for a catastrophic failure of rank. You must deliberately seek out situations that make your heart rate rise, and then practice holding your center in the middle of them. Public speaking. The fear of public speaking is effectively the fear of social judgment, a major pressure point. Seek out opportunities to speak. Not because you want to be a great orator, but because you want to practice feeling 50 sets of eyes on you while you keep your breathing slow. High-stakes competition. Whether it's sports, chess, or a high-pressure hobby, put yourself in positions where there is a win and a loss on the line. Practice staying analytical when you are losing. The cold plunge of social conflict. When you see a conflict brewing that you would normally avoid, step into it, not to argue, but to mediate. Practice being the calmest person in a heated debate. You are not doing these things for the activity itself. You are doing them so that your brain becomes familiar with the feeling of adrenaline. You are teaching your brain that adrenaline does not equal panic. You are teaching it that pressure equals focus. Pressure exposes preparation. Maintaining rank in conflict. The highest test of your rank often comes during a direct interpersonal confrontation. Someone attacks your character. Someone questions your competence. Someone shouts in your face. In these moments, the biological reveal is happening in real time. Your opponent is watching you for a sign of weakness. They are looking for the flinch, the stutter, or the defensive outburst. To maintain your rank, you must use the stillness technique. Lower your center of gravity, literally. Feel the weight in your feet. Relax your knees. Soften your gaze. Don't glare. Glarers are usually compensating for fear. Look at them with a calm, heavy gaze. Wait for the echo. After they finish their outburst, let their words echo in the silence for a full 5 seconds. This shows that their pressure didn't move you. It landed on you and stayed there, and you are still standing. When you respond, do not respond to their tone. Respond only to the substance, if there is any. If there is no substance, simply say, "I hear that you're upset. We can continue this when you've regained your composure." By doing this, you are outranking them. You are signaling that you are the adult in the room and they are the child. You have maintained your emotional standard while they have abandoned theirs. The pre-mortem of the mind. Another way to prepare for the reveal is the Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, the pre-mortem. Most people are shocked by pressure because they live in a hope-based reality. They hope the project goes well. They hope the flight isn't delayed. They hope people are nice to them. When reality fails to meet their hope, they crumble. The strategist lives in a preparedness-based reality. Before any major event, they ask, what is the worst possible way this could go? What if the client hates the pitch? What if the technology fails? What if I get publicly insulted? They play the movie of the disaster in their head. They feel the phantom pressure of it. And in that visualization, they see themselves remaining calm. They see themselves pausing. They see themselves executing a backup plan. By the time the actual pressure arrives, the brain says, "Oh, I've been here before. We know what to do." The shock is gone, and only the strategy remains. Pressure exposes preparation. The reward of high rank. When you become a person of high emotional rank, your life changes in ways you don't even see. Opportunities begin to gravitate toward you. Why? Because the world is a chaotic, frightening place for most people. They are desperate for a North Star. They want to do business with the person who doesn't panic when the market dips. They want to be in a relationship with the person who doesn't spiral when life gets hard. They want to promote the leader who can keep a team focused during a crisis. Your rank is your greatest asset. It is more valuable than your resume. It is more valuable than your IQ. Because in the moments that truly matter, the 1% of the time when everything is on the line, no one cares how smart you are. They only care how still you can be. Chapter 9 Summary and Integration. The reveal. Understand that pressure doesn't change you. It exposes who you've been training to be. Establish your rank. Realize that the calmest person in a crisis automatically becomes the leader. Stress inoculation. Deliberately seek out small, controlled pressures to build your composure reflex. The 5-second echo. In a confrontation, use silence to show that the other person's pressure has no power over you. Pre-mortem your life. Visualize the disaster before it happens so you are never shocked into reactivity. Repetitive phrase for the chapter. Pressure exposes preparation. Chapter 10. Become the emotional standard. The final evolution. We have traveled through the neurology of the gap, the training ground of your triggers, the strategic use of silence, and the discipline of your internal narrative. You have learned to maintain your baseline and hold your rank when the pressure rises. But now, we reach the summit of emotional mastery. Up to this point, we have treated emotional control as a tool, a weapon you draw when needed, a shield you raise when attacked. But in this final chapter, the tool must become the person. You are moving from the phase of practicing emotional control to the phase of embodying it. The world is a collection of chaotic energies, drifting aimlessly, looking for a center of gravity. Most people spend their lives being pushed and pulled by the moods of others, the headlines of the day, and the whims of their own chemistry. They are thermometers. They reflect the temperature of the room. If the room is angry, they get hot. If the room is cold and indifferent, they freeze up. But you are no longer a thermometer. You have become the thermostat. A thermostat doesn't reflect the temperature, it sets it. When you walk into a room, you don't ask what the vibe is, you bring the vibe. You are the emotional standard by which everyone else must now calibrate. You are the thermostat, not the thermometer. The science of radiant calm. There is a biological reality to this thermostat effect. Humans are wired for limbic resonance. Our nervous systems are not closed loops. They are open systems that constantly sync up with the strongest, most stable signal in the vicinity. Think about a time you were in a panic, and someone calm walked into the room. They didn't even have to speak. Just their presence, their slow breathing, their relaxed posture, their steady gaze, acted like an anchor for your own drifting mind. Your heart rate slowed down to match theirs. Your brain began to mirror their composure. This is radiant calm. When you master your own internal state to this degree, you become a psychological landmark. Because you are the most certain, the most still, and the most controlled person in the room, everyone else's nervous system will instinctively try to tune itself to your frequency. You are no longer fighting for influence. You are influence. The weight of the standard. Becoming the emotional standard is a heavy responsibility. It means you no longer have the luxury of an outburst. You no longer have the right to a public meltdown. Because people now look to you to see how they should feel, your reaction dictates the collective reality. If you are a leader and you show a flicker of panic, the entire organization will feel a surge of terror. If you are a parent and you show a lack of control, your children will learn that the world is an unsafe place. But when you hold the line, when you remain the standard, you provide a foundation for everyone around you to be their best selves. People will trust you with their secrets, their careers, and their lives, not because you are the smartest person they know, but because you are the most reliable. You are the unmovable object. In a world of shifting sand, people will build their houses on you. The integration, the 10 principles in action. To be the standard, you must integrate everything we have discussed into a single, fluid identity. Let's see how the emotional standard handles a hypothetical disaster. Imagine, a major project you've led has just been publicly criticized by the CEO, and 2 key team members have quit in frustration. The thermometer, the amateur, would react immediately. They would explain themselves. Chapter 4, get triggered by the disrespect. Chapter 2, create a victim narrative in their head. Chapter 5, and their baseline would spike into a panic. Chapter 6. The thermostat, the master, acts differently. Observation. They hear the criticism and the news of the departures. They pause and observe the physical sensation of the news without obeying it. Pause creates power. Silence. They don't interrupt the CEO. They don't beg the employees to stay. They gather data. Silence gathers data. Reframing. They immediately tell the story that this is a cleansing of the team and a chance to pivot to a better strategy. Interpretation creates emotion. Precision. They speak to the remaining team. They don't use clubs of fear. They use the scalpel of the next steps. Calm is leverage. Rank. Because they aren't shaking, the remaining team members stop feeling like the world is ending. The CEO's temperature begins to drop to match the leader's composure. By the end of the day, the room is calm because you are calm. You didn't ask them to be professional. You were so professional that they felt embarrassed to be anything less. The long-term edge. Decision clarity. The most profitable result of becoming the emotional standard is decision clarity. Emotional people make expensive mistakes. They hire the wrong people because they are excited. They sell their stocks because they are scared. They ruin relationships because they are hurt. Over a lifetime, these emotional taxes add up to a life of what ifs and if onlys. When you are the standard, you see the world through a clean windshield. You make decisions based on the 10-year goal, not the 10-second impulse. This allows you to play the long game. While everyone else is burning their resources on short-term emotional fires, you are compounding your gains. You are building an empire of logic and discipline. This is the edge no one sees, until it is too late for anyone to catch you. The identity shift. I am the calm. Mastery happens when you stop saying I am trying to be calm and start saying I am the calmest person I know. This is not arrogance. It is an identity statement. Your subconscious mind is always listening to how you describe yourself. If you describe yourself as reactive but working on it, you are giving yourself an out to fail. If you describe yourself as the standard, you are setting a boundary that your ego will strive to maintain. When a crisis hits, your first thought should be, this is the moment I was made for. I am the standard. Everyone is waiting to see how I react. I will give them a masterclass in composure. The ripple effect. When you master yourself, you change the world around you without ever trying to change anyone. Your competitors will become intimidated because they cannot find your weak spot. Your partners will become more loyal because they feel safe in your shadow. Your children will grow up with a blueprint for how to handle a complex world. You are the thermostat. You set the tone for your family, your company, and your community. If you are grounded, the world around you becomes grounded. If you are precise, the world becomes clear. The final repetition. As this audiobook concludes, I want these phrases to be burned into your mind. They are not just words. They are the operating system for your new life. Pause creates power. Every trigger is a test. Silence gathers data. Approval is expensive. Interpretation creates emotion. Consistency beats intensity. Calm is leverage. Win the small battles. Pressure exposes preparation. You are the thermostat, not the thermometer. A lifetime of mastery. The edge is not something you find and then keep forever. It is a garden that must be tended every single day. Tomorrow, the world will try to trigger you. Someone will be rude. A plan will fail. Your body will feel an impulse to react. In that moment, remember, you are the emotional standard. Smile at the challenge. Take your 3-second pause. Breathe through the gap. Observe the data. And then, Move with the surgical precision of a person who has finally, fully mastered themselves. The room is waiting. Go in and set the temperature. Chapter 10 Summary and Integration. Embody the role. Move from using emotional control to being an emotionally controlled person. Set the temperature. Realize that your internal state dictates the collective state of those around you. Limbic resonance. Use your calm to physically regulate the panic of others. The long game. Enjoy the clarity of thought that leads to superior, long-term decision-making. The final identity. Accept the responsibility of being the standard. Never lower it for anyone. Repetitive phrase for the chapter. You are the thermostat, not the thermometer. End of audiobook.